Welcome back to Blurred Summits. Today we have Dr. Amanda Crowell with us today. She is a cognitive psychologist and business coach who helps entrepreneurs figure out how to get more clients. She also works with a variety of different clients to help them with leadership and communication. She's joining us today to hopefully give us a few tips on how we can improve our lives. Thank you so much for coming on today, Dr. Crowell.
No, thank you for having me. I'm very excited to share all these projects with you.
Awesome. So just really quickly, one of the projects that you do have going on is called the Aligned Time Journal. Can you tell for our viewers who might not know what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the Aligned Time Journal is, there's a long version and a short version. So let me see if I can find the middle ground. About a few years ago, I did a TED Talk on procrastination, and the people that were commenting in the TED Talk comments seemed to be sort of in two categories. People who really did not want to do what they were being asked to do. They did not want to write the papers. They didn't want to find the internships. They were being forced to. They felt like they had to. They felt like they should. That was one category of people. And then I noticed there was an entirely other category of people who were really struggling with procrastination, which are people who really fall on the other end of the spectrum, who just really, really, really want to do whatever it is they're seeking to do. They really do want to be a great student. They really do want to be a successful, at finding an internship. There was something about what they're doing that's so compelling to them that triggers them over into procrastination also. So it was for that second group, the people who are very eager to be successful, that I created the Aligned Time Journal, because it's a compassionate time management system. I find that most time management systems out there in the world are very pressure filled, very high performance, everyone should be like an Olympic athlete, kind of very work out 55 hours a week, as opposed to real people trying to do extraordinary things with their lives while maintaining happiness, health, friendships, relationships at the same time. So the Aligned Time Journal is to help people do great work while not sacrificing themselves, their health, their happiness, their relationships to their great work. So it's possible to do both of those things. And the Aligned Time Journal gives you a way to do both of those things. So it's really meant for the people who really are eager, like I'm sure many of your listeners, eager to do great things, but just a little skeptical of the idea of being kind of burnout all the time or run ragged or not having enough time for the things that they actually also really want to have in their lives.
Why is it that sometimes if we're really passionate about something or we're really eager to do something, we end up procrastinating that, right?
I know, it sounds ironic, doesn't it?
Yeah. Is it just that's kind of the way that things are, or is there some sort of explanation that we know?
Oh, there's definitely an explanation. So and it basically comes down to drama. When you really want something to go well, there's just a lot of drama as part of it. There's drama at the beginning. You start procrastinating because you want to do it right. You want to wait until you can do it right. You want to, this is a classic one for writing papers, where it's really the best way to write a paper, right, as a university student, is to start, create a little bit of an outline, do bits and pieces of it over time, spread it out over the course of weeks. But when we're procrastinating at the beginning, we're like, I want to wait until I can really sit down and focus on it. And so we procrastinate. And then before you know it, it's the day before the paper is due and you're writing the whole thing, right, the day before that it's due. So when you're procrastinating at the beginning, it's usually because you don't want to chip away at it. You think you won't be able to give it your full effort if you just sit down and work on it for 25 minutes or something like that. You're waiting until you've got 5 hours to do it. And that can be okay if it's a small project, but when it's big projects like papers, or God forbid, it's like your honors thesis, putting it off to the last minute really is self-sabotage in the end. So that's one. And then you also procrastinate once you run into trouble. So when you really want to do something well and you run into a setback, you experience a little bit of failure, you make a mistake, especially if that mistake is public or you're worried that it will be, that can cause you to procrastinate at getting back to it. You know, if you run into a concept that you don't quite understand, it's like this knot in this straight line, and you sort of run up against the knot and you don't quite know what to do. Really, you do know what to do. You know that you have to ask for help. You need to try a different strategy. Like, you know, we know how actually to get around the knots and learning. But if you're not being strategic and being a project manager of your own education, an agent of your own education, it can sort of stop you. And then you experience what feels like procrastination getting back to it. And then there's procrastination at the very end of your projects too. Where you want it to be perfect. So you do it and redo it and then redo it and redo it and keep working on it and wordsmith it. This is more, I don't usually see this with university students on their college projects, but I do see it when they're trying to send a resume out for an internship. It's like they're just sitting and messing with it and showing it to a lot of people. And that's procrastination too, actually. Procrastination on putting it out into the world. So it's that drama that pops up at the different points in your projects that really come down to you wanting to do it perfectly, you know, not wanting to have to admit that maybe you aren't sure how to do it because you're worried that means that you can't do it. So it does come down to mindset blocks and perfectionism and just drama.
And is the best way to overcome that kind of drama or those knots to, you know, continuously experience them to the point where they don't affect you anymore? Or is there a better strategy?
Well, you can't get around the strategy you just said because that drama is always there. It's like the world's worst superhero sidekick. It's like just always there, right? Causing you to feel awkward and uncomfortable about the great work you're trying to do in the world. And even just lackluster projects, like the drama is just there, right? So there is a way where as you do more and more interesting work, when you're doing the work you've already done, right? Like, I don't know, answering questions at the end of a textbook, right? We can all kind of just do that now. There's not a lot of drama there because we've done it a million times. But when it comes down to actually like getting to those higher levels of experience where you're making an argument or, you know, engaging the real world around issues that matter to you, right? Going and writing, organizing a letter writing campaign or being the president of the student government or whatever it is that your people might be doing. That's where the drama is going to pick up. And so learning to manage the drama is what you need to do. So there's a few different ways to do that. One is all the three mindsets that were in my TED Talk, which we'll put a link of that in the show notes, I'm sure, are the things that really get in your head and mess with your belief about your ability to do it. One is like, I don't think I can. It takes talent, it takes intelligence I don't have, it takes physical ability I don't have, whatever it is, right? I just can't. That's the growth mindset, fixed mindset problem. There's also like people like me don't do this, where you think that you're leaving people behind or you come from an environment where this wasn't as common. I experienced that when I joined Crew in college. I was like, people from Lima, Ohio do not join Crew. We don't have any lakes. We don't have any rivers. Like, we don't do this. And it was really actually quite a big barrier to the ability to kind of do it because it felt like no one I know has ever done it. What if there's something about this that is just going to be really out of sync with my identity? So that's another one. And then, of course, there's the fact that you might not want to. So those are the three things that can get in your head and mess with your ability to do something. And managing those is a matter of changing your mind. It's a matter of changing your beliefs. You have to recognize that it isn't talent, it's effort that goes into doing actually anything at all, unless you're talking about the highest level of whatever it is, right? Like none of us are going to be Kobe Bryant. Well, maybe we will, but we probably already know that, right? Like the vast majority of us are not going to be Albert Einstein or Elon Musk, right? And we don't have to be to do the things that we want to do in our lives, right? If we want to be more fit, We don't have to be Kobe Bryant. If we want to be a scientist, even a bench level, PhD level scientist, you don't have to be Albert Einstein. There was only one. So we kind of keep ourselves locked in these fears, comparing ourselves to the highest levels, when really it's not even really what we want. We just want to be in it. We want to be in the world. We want to be making an impact, developing relationships, like solving problems. You could cure cancer and not be Albert Einstein, right? You could do great things. So the idea that we can't falls to the wayside when we better understand what it actually takes to do great things in the world. And then the idea of, people like me don't do this really is a matter of just opening yourself up to being a different kind of person, that you aren't locked in. You're not at the mercy of who you were before. You can be someone new, and you can be someone new by choosing to be someone new. But it helps to be kind of open and realize that you're having that particular block, because otherwise it's this unexamined, weird feeling of not belonging, which can actually cause a lot of trouble. And then if you don't want to do it, you can either say, I'm not going to do it, which is actually recommended for anything that you're doing just because you think you should, or you can choose to change the way that you see it. You can find what's interesting about it, get to know people who like it. So there's a way to sort of get into your own brain and resolve these issues. That helps a lot when you're like, how do I handle this drama? That's one piece. Then you need a system. You need a system to keep you at it, which is really where the Aligned Time Journal comes from. It's it helps you set 90-day goals. Although for college students, I recommend setting 4-month goals because semesters tend to be 4 months. So just go ahead and set a 4-month goal. And then in those goals, every week and every day, you just check in on it. You just stay with it. Asks you the questions that psychology tells us stop people in their tracks. Like, what's going to get in my way? That way, when something gets in your way, you're not surprised. You just work your way through it. Whereas the drama is the surprise. So there's a way to manage this drama as it pops up, but you can't eliminate it, especially not if you're committed to doing interesting things with your life. So really, it's a question of kind of getting ahead of it and figuring out what's my most common drama that I tend to experience, and what are my best ways around it? So sort of developing your own self-expertise, which the Aligned Time Journal actually helps you do too.
Awesome. Something interesting you said was if you're in a certain environment, or this is something that a lot of people I've heard ask, and I never knew the answer, and I never really heard a great answer. So I kind of want to see your perspective on it, which is, if I'm in a certain environment, let's say I want to get better, right? I want to pursue more meaningful things. I want to, make something more out of my life. But I'm stuck in a certain environment where everyone around me has a certain perception of me, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone takes me to be a certain way, and I kind of do things a certain way. I want to do it differently, but it's very difficult for me because I'm stuck in this box. Yeah. Is there a way to manage that, or is it just you have to leave the environment and start new? Or is there some way to kind of reinvent yourself within your own environment?
Yeah. There is a way. And sometimes it's helpful to find your way without necessarily blowing up your life and moving to an entirely new place, to introduce new environments to your existing environment for you as a person. You can travel into other new environments. But let's start by recognizing how other people impact us, right? So, because once you realize how they're impacting you, then you have the clues to what to do in order to be different in that same environment, right? So the way that people impact us is there's a few different ways. One is that we, as little kids, absorb who we are from the people around us. So if you grew up in an environment and everyone saw you, like you said, in a certain way, when you're young, you just absorb that. As an adolescent, you start to retaliate against it, but you're retaliating against what you've absorbed, right? So there's a certain range that your questioning is going to reach out to, right? So imagine, we call this psychological anchoring. It's like, imagine if everyone told you, I bet they did, Abdul, you are brilliant. You're the most intelligent kid on the block. You're going to be great. You're going to do it all. I have complete faith in you. right? And you absorb that. You're like, I am the man, right? So then you become an adolescent and you ask yourself, what's really true about what I believe about myself? If you think about the range, let me see if I fit it in here, the range that you will question is going to be based around the anchor that you started with. So you might question negatively, like, maybe I'm not as great as everyone says, but you're never going to be like, maybe I'm a complete fuck up. Forgive my language. I hope that's okay.
It's fine.
Okay. You're never going to question that far outside of your range, right? Because you're anchored into what people believe of you. So very often people have these sort of anchoring effects when they are taken completely out of one environment and dropped into another. So like, let's not use you as the example because I don't actually know you very well. So someone like you, right, who was the top guy in their high school and then gets, accepted to McGill, right? McGill's a really good school in Canada, is it not?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay. Yeah, it's like the best.
One of the best.
It's Harvard of Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that person gets pulled out of their just regular old high school. They wrote a killer essay, like whatever they got in. And then they get dropped into McGill. And suddenly everybody in the whole school was that person in their high school. Right. And now they're no longer anchored at the top where there's not even really any room to go up from here, as far as we're concerned. Now they're smack dab in the middle. They are average. There's a lot of people ahead of them who are better at whatever being a student than they are. That anchoring effect has a very shocking impact on people. It's like, whoa, I don't know who I am at all. And what that is that the range you were used to sort of moving in, which is plus or minus whatever, a standard deviation from where your family and neighborhood and all that thought you were. And suddenly you're way outside, your whole range is now up here. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So some of it's just being aware of the impact that anchoring has on us and loosening up our understanding of reality, kind of, because you're not a high achiever. You're just like a person surrounded by people placed, on a whole bunch of continuums based on who's around you. You're still the same person when you go over here and you're suddenly average. And so not allowing the way, first of all, recognizing that this is how we come to understand ourselves, but also realizing that you had the ability to go this high. It felt like you had no more to grow, but all this space that's now occupied at McGill was there before. And so you don't have to be bracketed by expectations. So the first is sort of to remove the brackets and realize that anything is possible for me. And that includes all the way up to the top of McGill, or to say, you know what? I don't need to be the top of that heap. That looks like a lot of work and not that much fun. And actually, what I really want to do is build a business. And turns out that being a great student is not actually good practice for building a good business. And so I'm going to instead just pivot and exist on a different continuum. And that you realize you could do anything. It's a fully available world. So one of those things is realizing that what you're surrounded with does not have to provide the brackets of your experiences. And then what we're absorbing, there's more specifics about what we're absorbing from the people around us that we can reject in the same way. For example, all those mindset blocks. If your mother or all your friends think that the only thing that makes you a great student is talent, you can reject that. You have to recognize that it's impacted you, and it doesn't help a lot to be pissed about that. But if you realize, they hold this belief, I'm not going to be mad at them for having their beliefs, but I am going to reject that belief. And realizing one of the things that happens there when you begin to reject beliefs that people hold as truths is it's uncomfortable. They disagree with you. They tell you that you're wrong. They tell you that you're making bad mistakes. Like they tell you that you are, a classic example of this is somebody who has decided that they want to get a PhD in a hard science, but their parents, for example, parents believe that is something that you have to be like 100% on board with in the middle of high school. You had to have taken all of those science classes already. You have to declare right when you get to college, and she hasn't done those things. And they're going to tell her it's not possible. It's not possible for you. And she can believe them, or she can talk to the people who believe it is possible and find the path, because there is almost always a path. There are some things in the world that are very locked down, right? If you want to be an astronaut, you probably do need to figure out that you want to be an astronaut by like your sophomore year in college. Otherwise, you might be a little bit behind. But if you want to do all the normal things that people do, there's usually a path available to you. And so holding a growth mindset understanding of the world at large might put you in conflict with the people around you. And you have to just get used to that discomfort. Because here's the third thing that makes it possible for you to stay in your existing environment and be a completely different person. And that is the people around you. Here's the thing about people. We think, man, they're never going to change. But when it comes to their understanding about you, it will change so much faster than you could ever imagine. If you were a straight-laced, like, sports guy in high school, right? Let's just pretend. And then you went to college and you discovered the theater and you just loved it. And suddenly it was all like musicals and tap shoes for you. And you came home. At first, people would try to put you back into your box just for their own comfort. Not because they're trying to be a jerk, just because they're trying to understand the world they live in. People don't really change this much. They need to put you back into a box for their own comfort. They are going to try. And if they fail, what they're going to do is get used to you as you currently are. People get used to things quickly. Our brain is designed to become familiar with something as quickly as possible. Your brain does not enjoy being surprised over and over again by the same thing. So instead, it gets used to it. And suddenly, as far as they're concerned, you've always been a musical loving tap dancer. It's just how it is. They will get used to it. What happens again and again, especially with young people, is they go and they find something that they love and they come home changed, but then they believe the story they're hearing around them and they go back to being what they were, or they hide a piece of themselves so as not to make other people uncomfortable. And what you're doing in that case is you're prolonging the inevitable, because they will get used to who you are. They will accept who you are. And if there is something about you that they cannot accept, like if you discover that you are gay and you come home to a community and the community is not okay with that, and you're being harassed, right? I'm not saying that you individually can change the culture of the world around you. In that case, you may need to leave for your safety. But if it's just something that people are like surprised by, they will get used to it, and you are not going to cause a lot of drama by being who you are. And the sooner you are the you-iest version of you can be, A, the better work you will do. B, you're making the planet a better place because you're providing this role model for other people in your community who also want to be musical loving tap dancers. And the person that was surprised got a new piece of information about the world. You expanded their worldview. When we're honest about ourselves, the world becomes a better place because you impact them in the same way that they impact you. We create the reality that we experience by looking around us. So if you can learn to view yourself differently and accept yourself for who you are, you can change your internal experience of the world, and you don't have to change your external experience of the world to be a different person. But you do, in order to do it that way, have to be comfortable with discomfort, the discomfort of people being surprised, the discomfort of people sometimes being angry or upset with you, and the discomfort of yourself having to be comfortable with what you're leaving behind. And that's why people leave the environment in order to change themselves dramatically, because it's a whole lot easier to pick yourself up and drop yourself in an environment where nobody knows who you are and you just get to be that person instead. Going to college is sometimes like that. Suddenly you get to be the tap dancing musical lover and nobody knows any different. They're not surprised because that's who you've always been. Or people who move from the Midwest to San Francisco just to be comfortable with, while they're building deep comfort with their own sexuality, or people who, move out of difficult environments as soon as they can so that they can have a sense of stability, and not feel like their old friendships are going to bring them back into old habits that they're trying to let go of.
Do you think it's better to reinvent yourself within your own environment rather than pick yourself up? Because is that kind of the easy way out, would you say? Or do you think that it's just a matter of which one works for you?
I think that you have to, I don't think that there is a right or wrong way to live your life, actually. I mean, at this level, at this granular level, I think it is easier in some ways to pick yourself up and drop yourself into a new environment where you can just be who you wanted to be. But that assumes that that's the number one driver in your life for everything you do, right? But there's a lot of loss that comes from picking yourself up and dropping yourself into a new spot. Like you're not around your family, you don't have the social support. Maybe there are people who rely on you that you're no longer with. So it's a complicated choice, and one that has to work for you, and no choice is forever. You often see people who, for example, maybe they grew up in the South Bronx, which in New York City is a difficult neighborhood. They grew up in the South Bronx. They went to, say, Hunter College, which is one of these CUNY schools, which is a city university of New York in New York City. And then they got a master's degree at Harvard, and they went to Yale Law School, right? And then they live in Westchester, which is a very fancy suburb of New York City, for a while. And then they realize, I've made so much of myself, I've done so well for myself, and I need to go back to the South Bronx so that I can bring this elevated or at least expanded perspective back to my neighborhood. And that's in the same lifetime. It's like, so sometimes when we think like, oh, I'm turning my back forever on something, you're not. You're going for a minute and you're figuring yourself out, and then you're bringing an expanded version of yourself back to where you came from. And sometimes that is what you needed to do. And other times you need to stay where you are because you have a family to take care of, because you are needed, because your income is required for your family not to starve or whatever. So I think that it isn't about like taking the easy way out, but it's also not like necessarily the moral high ground to stay. It really is about, what are you overcoming? What are you hoping to accomplish with your life? How do you need to, this is really the point. We're actually very much in control of our realities by changing who we surround ourselves with, by changing how we think in our own minds, by changing the people that we talk to and the things that we study and the communities that we join. The world shifts around us and different opportunities show up just because of those people. And you get to choose. You get to exert a force on your life, and you get to change the forces you allow to impact your life over time. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, I think it did. And let's say there's a person who wants to improve their life, who wants to change, but they don't know where to start.
Yeah.
Right? Where would you say, here's a good starting place? Here's a good first step?
Yeah. Well, there's two. So on the one hand, it's about maybe don't believe that you don't have any idea what you want long-term, what your vision for your life is. Sometimes I hear people say I'm all over the place. I don't know. I don't have any goals. I don't have any false information. If you think that you have no purpose or goal or drive or desires, it's just because you have for some reason, one reason or another, decided that those desires don't matter, and you shut them down a little bit. And some of the work is opening yourself back up to what you want. And one of the links that I sent you is this vision guide, and people can work their way through that vision guide and start to realize there are really like consistent things that when you ask yourself, what do I want? It's always those things. Practice believing yourself that what you say you want is what you want. And then once you've kind of gotten an idea of where you're headed and what you want and why you want it, then I would say to get started on it. So one of the things that I talk a lot about in the Align Time Journal and the book that's coming out, on the podcast, all the things, is that your ideas are different from each other, right? Like you're like, I'm a person with a lot of ideas, and some of them are at the level of a vision. You know, I want to cure cancer. You are going to cure cancer tomorrow. I mean, if you could, that would be great. But the likelihood that, you know, as an undergraduate student, you're going to have the insight required to cure cancer tomorrow is just really, really small. But that's because, not because there's something wrong with you, but because what you're looking at is an idea that's at the level of a vision. It's not meant to drive your behavior tomorrow. It's meant to excite you and keep you moving and make you feel emotion and keep you going when things get hard. Underneath vision is what we call accessible aspiration, which is like a 1 to 3 years. In 1 to 3 years, what could you do? Like by the time you graduate from college, what could you do? Well, you could get this biology degree that would put you in line for med school, or you could learn research methods and get a research internship. Like there's something that you can kind of moves you vaguely even in the direction of what you're hoping for, gives you more information, clarifies what's required in order to get to, you know, the Cancer Research Center. And that's an aspiration. And then there are 90-day goals, or in the case of undergraduates, like 120-day goals, right? 4-month, semester-long goals. And that would be given, and like a goal would not be do well in my lit class. It would be, you know, to really get involved in the literary groups on campus and really start to figure out what it means to be like a intelligentsia, right? Like, who are these people? What do they talk about? Do I like them? And just start experimenting. And in the case of curing cancer research, maybe it's like, I'm going to really 100% dive all the way in on my anatomy and physiology class that I'm taking. I'm going to go to the tutoring, even if I feel like I don't need it. I'm going to join a study group, even though I kind of hate group work. I'm going to really go all in. And that's the goal level. That's the kind of goal we're talking about. Goals that get you closer to your vision, just a little bit closer. And then every week and every day, you take a small step. So maybe this week it's like, I'm going to reach out to that person in class who seemed like a nice person. And I'm going to write an awkward email asking if I can be her friend. And then maybe that's your goal for the week. And you realize you need to figure out what her name is. And that might be what you do today, is you kind of ask around, what's her name? Or maybe just ask her, what's your name? What's your email? And then later this week, you might have a daily task of like writing the email. So it sounds like it's deep in the weeds, but what it does is it combats what I like to call goalmnesia, which is like where you want something, but then you forget that you want it and you haven't made any steps. Somebody asks you about it 3 months later and you're like, oh yeah, I didn't do anything. I've done nothing to move in that direction. And that is what makes us feel like what we want is just completely out of reach, because we haven't been taking little steps, learning more, asking questions, joining communities, being engaged with our goal. And when you do that, then you believe that you can cure cancer or be a literary writer. I think that was the other example I used.
Yeah, so it kind of sounds like, if you just have the vision, but you don't have any actionable small steps to take towards it, then you're just gonna either forget about it or you're gonna think that you can't do it.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
And then the point is of what was the project called again? The
Align Time Journal?
No, the one where it helps to connect the different
Oh, the
levels.
different levels. Yeah, it's just I can actually I can send you a link to the drawing. This is also a video. Do you want me to share my screen and show it to you?
Yeah, or you can send the link and we'll post the link on in the video
Okay.
description for all of our viewers. They can go and take a look at it and kind of help to visualize for themselves those different stages, and kind of use those. I think that's a nice little system,
Yeah.
that a person can use to help connect, the smaller actions to the bigger goal, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because then you can hold your idea accountable to what it actually can do. There are a lot of people angry that they are not making progress on their goals this week, not realizing that a goal requires multiple weeks of action. If it only takes 1 week, it's not a goal, it's a task. If it
Hmm.
only takes a day, it's not a task, it's a to do. And so
Right.
understanding, and then feeling like kind of deflated when something small that they do doesn't have a big impact. And you realize, well, it's just a to do. Can't expect it to do to have an impact of a goal. So I think it allows people to see it more clearly and hold themselves like to a place where they're much less frustrated because they kind of know what's going on. Because again, it comes down to just being agentic in your life, intentional, strategic, which are skills. It requires some skills to learn how to do those things.
What would you say is the biggest thing when it comes to goal setting that you wish
Yeah.
a lot of people knew or that they should implement?
I think honestly that especially when you're learning really how to be someone who's setting goals that matter to you. Like it's one thing to set a goal someone tells you to set, right? Like I have to do this paper. Fine, I'll set the goal of doing the paper. That doesn't have a lot of drama to it, except in the sense that you worry you can't do it or you're going to end up putting it to the last minute and all that sort of stuff. But when you're really setting a goal that matters to you, I would say that surprisingly, the first few goals that you set the goal of them should not be, or the purpose of them shouldn't be progress. It should be trust with yourself, which means they should be very, very small. And you should be able to do them kind of no matter what else happens. Because when you're setting a goal that matters to you and you have a story about yourself and how it's not possible and you always set goals and don't do anything, or whatever story you have about yourself as a goal setter, you have to rewrite some of that story and then allow your goals to grow a little over time. So setting really, really small goals at first is actually a great thing to do. It puts you back in control, and allows you to feel your way into what is a big goal for you. And most people set goals that are too big, really, really too big when they first get started, like really big. I'm going to write a whole book. It's like, are you? Have you written even a blog? No. Well, maybe you should write a blog. Maybe you should do that for a little bit. Just not because I don't believe in you, but because I do believe in you. And I know that it takes effort and skill. And I want you to see some of your writing go cradle to grave and out into the world and see how that feels and see if you like it before you take on a massive project like writing a book. And I find people do that a lot. Really big projects right out of the gate.
Awesome. To switch subjects a little bit here, I really want to talk about something that I heard in your TED Talk, and we'll link the entire talk down in the description. But really quickly, one of the things you spoke about was defensive failure, right?
Yeah.
And so can you kind of describe what is defensive failure for those people who might not know what it is, and what are some steps we can take to overcome it?
Sure. So defensive failure is actually a lot like goalnesia. It's where you set a goal and then you don't do anything about it. Often because you set a goal that's too big, right? So if you're like, I'm going to work out every day this week, and then it's like Saturday and you haven't done it at all, and you maybe didn't even think about it in between the time when you set the goal and you realized you hadn't met the goal. That's defensive failure, which is a psychological concept of failing kind of in advance by not doing anything so that you can avoid what we would call like action-driven, insight-filled, productive failure, which is a much more terrifying experience of doing it badly. Everyone sees you but really it feels much worse, but it actually is the pathway to being able to improve and do it well. And just like we were talking about other people, how they get used to you really quick, because their brain is looking for efficiency and familiarity, because your brain is so good at efficiency and familiarity, you're going to get good at whatever it is really quickly too. Very little of the things we want to do, even the things we've struggled with our whole lives, are really, from a purely cognitive and skills-based perspective, that difficult. It really is about doing it, failing at it, and then not entrenching in the failure. Sometimes when we fail, we like hide away and we don't tell anyone and we just feel embarrassed and everything's terrible. But if you instead realize, okay, so I failed, I need to now ask for help, try it a different way, get back on the horse quickly so that I don't make a big deal about it. If you can do those things instead, which sort of manage your experience, then you will have a much better chance of moving like out of defensive failure where you don't do anything and all you do is think about doing it, into failure where you're actually getting better over time.
Okay, great. And one last question to end us off. We ask this to all of our guests, but we're going to get you to sort of imagine that you're going on a hike, right? And the goal of this hike is to get to the top of this mountain, right? Now, when you go on hikes, there are certain things that you can bring with you that help you along this hike. For example, you bring some hiking boots. Those are useful. Some poles, some snacks, some water. Those things, they help you along your journey, right? So imagining that this hike is a person's life and that the peak of this hike, the top of the mountain, is the pinnacle of their achievement. They've gotten everything that they want out of their life. What are some characteristics or some things that you think people should bring along with them on this journey or this hike of life that would help them reach that goal?
Yes. So I would call that pinnacle their great work. And I would think of it as more of a plateau than a peak. It's like, because you really can do your great work every minute of your life if you choose to. There is no peak. You don't ever arrive. But I take your point, and it's a good one. So in order to get yourself to the place where you are engaged in your great work, I would say, well, you should have an aligned time journal so that you have a workspace to be an agent of your efforts, like watching yourself try new things and ask for help and figure things out and learn about yourself. I would bring self-expertise, which is an acceptance that you are a particular person with particularities that matter to you. Like some of the things that everyone says you should do won't work for you. And if you accept yourself as who you are, and then just don't do those things. Like if it doesn't work for you to time block, don't time block. If it doesn't work for you to check your email all day, check your email once a day. You get to be the boss of your lived experience. So self-expertise is the ability to just say, I am who I am, and what I need is what I need, and stop trying to be like everybody else and worry you're not doing it right. So self-expertise would be hugely helpful. And then I would say like a community of people who are awesome. If you don't have people around you who hold you in high esteem and think you can do amazing things, then I would say go intentionally seek out people like that. People who just really are not going to let you give up on yourself. They're not going to let you say crap about yourself like, I'm just not the kind of person who. They're the ones who are going to be like, it's bullshit. You're awesome. If you want to do that, you can. And if you don't have those people, just believe that they exist, because they do. You can find them. And if you feel a little lonely hearing that, then I would say like get a little uncomfortable. Go out, talk to people. Don't accept the first people who show up in your lives. Keep looking for the people who believe in you and can see you for all your greatness. And I do think if you have like a strategy, which the Aligned Time Journal gives you, but any other strategy is fine too. Some self-expertise and acceptance, like radical acceptance of you as you are, because you don't get to be someone else. Like, period. We've all tried to be like, I should be more organized. It's like, well, you can be more organized if you want to, but like you probably aren't ever going to be a type A person. And that's fine. Right. And if you're a type B person who's just like, it's all creativity all the time, that's awesome too. And as a type A person myself, like I look at you and think like, I want to be more like that. But what I need to do is accept who I am. So a repeatable system, acceptance of who you are, like radical, dominating self-acceptance, that's huge. And then friends who believe in you and communities that lift you up. Those are the things you need in order to get to the plateau that is great work.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today and, sharing your aligned time journal, the different strategies that people can use, and some tips and tricks on how to overcome these problems that I honestly think are sweeping. Like everyone has experienced these things. It's not just a few people, it's everybody. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for having me on. It was a great experience. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. If you enjoyed the content that you heard today, think of one friend who could benefit from the information and be sure to share this podcast with them. You can catch the full video podcast on YouTube. The full audio podcast is out on all platforms. Be sure to check the link in the description for all of the great work that Dr. Crowell has done. And be sure to tune in next week for the next episode. Thank you.